in riskier investments, which do have a higher return. But guess what? They also lose. One year they actually lost money on the principal because the stock market went down. Now, on average, it doesn't. But the point of that was to have a portion of it, a smaller portion, that was completely safe. And you've got a group of people now that have formed, and I'll be honest with you, I'm hesitant to talk about it because this group is very aggressive. If you disagree with them, they've come after people. And so it's a little hard for me, hey, we just want the best for everybody, but if you argue with us, we're going to come after you.
That sounds like somebody else I know.
So they want the money. It's about $16 million. And to be honest, there's a lot in this argument. For example, they say, oh, look at the United Way, how much money they make, so let us invest the money. Well, that'd be like me going, Magic Johnson was a great basketball player, so why don't you hire me to play basketball for you? They're not the United Way.
Well, why wouldn't the United Way just have it?
Well, because we actually wanted the money in two different hands. We wanted the United Way money is in a community group, and
right.
They use the money the way they see fit, and they do good with it.
That's right.
The HCI portion of this was supposed to be under the county's control so that they could do other types of projects with it.
Like what? It's supposed to be something that's health related.
And community improvement and that type of thing.
What would that be?
They've built playgrounds. They've done all kinds of things. Now, I will say the county commission, there's a committee that does this. The county commission has overridden the committee a time or two and invested money in things that the committee didn't think they ought to invest in. For example, the VA home. The committee thought there's no guarantee that this VA home is even going to happen, so why are we putting money into it now that could be used for other things? The commission, I personally think, because of political considerations, overrode them and put the money in there. And that money's been spent, and we still are no closer to knowing whether we're going to have a VA home or not. And then you've also got the problem of you've got some management fees that will be associated with this foundation. And one of the arguments is they said, well, the management fee is only going to be 1%. Well, to be honest, it's actually anywhere from 25% to 100%. Because what it is it's 1% of the total. Well, you invest that money, let's say you earn 4% return on the total.
Right.
If your fee is 1% and you're only earning 4%, that fee is actually 25% of your income.
Right.
And if your return drops to 3%, that fee is now 33%. If your investment drops to 2%, which is actually what it's kind of been averaging, that fee is actually 50% of your income. And if it ever dropped to 1% return, which the United Way money did when the stock market went down, that fee's actually 100% of your income.
So is this management firm making the money then?
It's not a firm. They've hired an employee to manage it.
Okay.
Now, right now, you're not earning as much, but you don't have any fee on it either.
Right. Well, right now, nobody's earning any money.
Well, I mean, he earns this year it was down a good bit. There's also the possibility you could always go back to the comptroller and say, we would like to change the terms of this original agreement. I think it's actually a private act type thing. And it was very strict because they were trying to make sure they protected the money. Keep in mind, it's not as simple as just saying we can earn more return.
Right.
You also are taking more risk with the money. The way you earn more return is you take more risk.
Right. So there's a chance this money could disappear.
Well, I mean, on average, look, I'm a believer in the stock market. Stock market from 1929 to today has earned 8 or 9% on average. But there are years when it's real high and there are years when it's real low. The stock market actually, the United Way Fund actually lost money a few years back. Now, they've made it back. But the point was to have a portion of the hospital money that was not subject to the losses.
Right.
But that also means it's not subject to the higher gains either. But it's safe.
In other words, it was put into a safe.
It was put in a much safer investment vehicle. That was the whole point of
now
it.
The safer investment vehicle is not going to be quite as safe.
A safer is never going to return the same return.
But it's going to be safe, but
it
not
doesn't have
quite
the same
as
risk.
Safe. In other words, they're hoping to get, 5 or 6%?
I mean, it's
like what we have now is risk-free.
Right.
That's the answer.
You're not going to lose.
All right. So that's really where the debate is. Do you want to give up that absolute security for
And do you
some
want to
high
put
return.
it in the control of another community group?
I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's the debate.
So
One way or the other.
If the commissioners vote on this to move the money,
Well, there's a second level of this which hadn't really been addressed yet.
what is that?
Well, this is all part of a consent agreement that was worked
Through the
out through the
courts.
Chancery Court up there as part of the dissolution of things. Because remember, there was a lawsuit about where these funds were going to go from the sale of the hospital.
Right.
And so I'm not. I haven't read the document, but I'm not entirely certain that it doesn't have to have court approval.
I don't
to do
think
that.
they can do it on the face of it. I think Franklin's right. It's a court consent agreement.
So I don't know if.
Well, my question is, if the commissioners were to vote on this and something were to happen, and the money would be lost, it'd be egg on their face, right?
Well, I think
Well,
that's
if
a
the-
reasonable. all the
Unless,
I'm
of
sure
course,
they'd
you
be
can
very-
put enough distance between it and have enough meetings in back rooms that no one ever reports on it.
Everybody would like to have a higher return. I get that. I mean that makes
But
perfect
but
sense.
they're
On the,
only-
on the other hand, let me just say this. I would predict over the next 18 to 24 months that interest rates are
Will
going to
come
go
up.
up some. The return's going to go up some with it when that happens. So the income from this is probably going to increase over the next year or two anyway, because we've been abnormally low.
But again, the fundamental here is that the discussion is all on one side of this. If you take any kind of finance or money and banking course, they will teach you risk versus return. So if you increase that risk, you have to or that return, you have to accept more risk. And we want to have this big discussion about return, but no one wants to discuss the fact the whole point of the lower return, the safer investment vehicle, was to make sure we didn't have any loss on this. And it was not the total. There is the bigger chunk of the money is in the hands of the United Way already earning a higher return.
So
This is basically like you have a stock account that you invest your money in, and then you have a savings account. The savings account is guaranteed by the government, and you know you're not going to lose. So that savings account is your sort of foundation.
right.
And that's the point. Do you want to have some money that's safe and secure, or do you want to take more risk?
Well, I think it was put there for a particular reason.
It was put there to be safe.
That's
and
right.
it was also so that the county could actually have some control. I don't know how you put this in this other foundation's hands, and then is the county still going to – I can't imagine this group wants to invest it and then not control how the income is doled out. Because personally, I think that's what this is actually about. You know, hey, we'd like to be able to dole this out because, you know, anybody doling out money is pretty popular.
And I guess when will this come about?
The commission has to vote on it. You know, this is the same money
Next
that
week. Next week.
This is the same money that I mentioned a few weeks ago. If we could get permission from the comptroller, we might actually be able to loan that money to the county to build Lake Forest. The county could pay a higher return, which is what we're talking about here on the money, but at the same time pay a lower interest rate than that would cost them if they actually had to borrow the money from an outside source. For me, that would be a win-win.
What's wrong with that? Can it be done, Franklin?
Well, first you got to get this vote. If they vote to give this money to the foundation, that's off the table.
Well, he's right about that. I think it would the same standard would apply to it. You'd have to get the court approval for that
Well,
You know,
process also.
I know the county commissioners have been busting their chops trying to find money for Lake Forest. Now, surely they're not running around this and nobody's thought of that idea.
I think that idea has been discussed, but here's the point: that vote, if they vote to give that money to that foundation, there's that's the end of the idea of borrowing from it. Now, you might not be able to borrow from it. You know, the court might not allow it. The court may not allow you to give the money to this foundation either.
Right.
But the point is that vote will determine whether it's even a possibility.
All right, let's do this. Why don't we ask the county commission if they vote on this for the court to approve, that they also put some wording in there that the money could be used to go towards this Lake Forest Middle School and be repaid back the way you suggested. In other words, it would be presented two different ways for the court to.
You know, part of the problem is
Mylan, where are you?
I will tell you that from what I understand, the commission has been lobbied hard on this by the group that wants the money.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's a group that wants that Lake Forest Middle School also pretty hard, isn't there? Mm-hmm. They're searching desperately trying to find the money. So, Mylan, give us a call, 614-5553. Yeah. Mylan, give me a text. We'll get to the bottom of this, folks. Let's talk about one more local thing. The workhouse proposal made to the commission. Evidently, they're talking about $2.8 million or something. Mylan's pushing this from the county's perspective only to be able to submit it to an architect to be drawn up. But it looks like some kind of architect firm has presented something already. Oh, we got a call. Go ahead and answer the call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hey, good morning, Doug. It's Mylan. How are you this morning?
Hey, buddy. Thanks for calling.
Yeah.
Well, talk to us about this. Can some of the money, could it possibly be used for the Lake Forest project?
Help me out on which topic you're talking on. I had to run up.
We're talking about the HCI money. I had mentioned a month ago that if we could get permission, and it's just a novel idea that the HCI could actually loan the money to the county at a cheaper rate than the county could borrow it. The county could actually pay a higher rate of return than HCI could normally get. That money could be used to build Lake Forest, and the county would still provide the same income that HCI is used to. And at the end, we have a school, we have the money back, win-win.
Well, the issue with that is we have to get approval from Nashville. The Attorney General and Comptroller. It has to go through.
Right.
Right.
Go through, outside of the county commission. It's not in and of ourselves to make that.
But aren't you going to have to get permission to give this money to the other group?
Yeah, I mean, and I made that very clear in the commission meeting the other day that a vote for basically handing the money over to an outside organization like the Community Foundation or the Cleveland State, anything outside of the county commission, or specifically the trustee's office, is going to have to go upstairs or up to the Chancellor's Court for approval. So that's just one step in many steps in order to accomplish what that vote would be intended to. But my point was we are at a point where we need to make a decision on whether or not this is a concept we want or not. Finance has done everything we need to do as far as looking at the proposals and stuff like that, so it's time for the full commission to vote.
All right. Now, John, the way John brought it up, if you vote on this and it goes to give the money to this outside group, you wouldn't have the opportunity to come back and utilize the money for Lake Forest. And you need to go ahead and apply for permission for both to be able to utilize this money, correct?
Well, there's some truth to that. If we decide to give the money to an outside organization, then there wouldn't be a need because we've made a decision on what we want to do.
How if you borrowed the money to build Lake Forest School right now, what would you be doing? You'd be getting a bond.
You always have to issue a bond on capital. That's the only way the county can borrow money is through a bond method.
Okay, and then what interest rate would you be paying on that?
There's a market for it, so it changes from.
Dictates that.
Yeah.
But you possibly utilize some of this HCI money and save everybody some money, right?
If we're allowed to do that, yeah.
Well, would it not be worth trying to look into?
But wouldn't that investment? And first of all, it's rare that John says something that immediately gets my attention and piques my interest, and I think there's some merit to this proposal that he's come up with. And I mean, wouldn't you be able to? Essentially, you'd be using the county's own credit standing to support the investment. And potentially saving a lot of money.
We'd save money and make money.
Yeah, it seems to me like a pretty smart idea.
Yeah, It's an option that I want to investigate more. It's just in order to get to that point, we have to go through this.
Well, when you say go through, and what you mean is, in order to be able to investigate that, you have to vote no as far as giving the money to this foundation.
Well, you could certainly just vote to defer the decision while you're investigating some other alternatives.
I'm sorry?
You could vote to defer this decision while you're investigating some other alternatives, couldn't you? I mean, the money's sitting there safe now, so there's no
What's the hurry?
there's no compelling reason it has to be done next week or anything.
Well, I think that what has been communicated to me is that the folks in Nashville want us to vote and give a decisive answer on what we want to do with respects to these proposals before.
Why would the people in Nashville have any concern?
Because they want to know what you want to do. They don't want to start down a road and then have you pull the rug out from under them.
Who's they?
Well, I mean, I'm sure the courts or whoever's in charge of this.
The comptroller's office.
So
There is a fair amount of oversight out of Nashville for local budgeting finance decisions.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mylan, when you all talk about this, they always come in and talk about what return they can get for you. Can you make sure that there's also a discussion of the increased risk that comes with the increased return?
I think anytime you go outside of CDs and U.S. Treasury bonds, you know that you're going to have to assume more risk.
Well, the problem is when we read about this in the media, they always talk about return, but they never say that is traded for higher risk.
That's true, but it's educated risk. I mean, there's always risk.
Well, there's not any risk in T-bills unless you think the federal government's going to collapse.
And that's the very low interest rate.
Right. But my point is
It's safe.
It's safe. The whole point of having the lower investment vehicles that this is restricted to was to make sure that this portion of the sale of the hospital money is safe.
What's going to happen if you vote to do this and then something happens and the money gets lost?
I mean, they have the comptroller, and I mentioned this in the county commission meeting the other day. I formally asked our county attorney to quote unquote petition the comptroller to tell us what this money, how it's defined. And there's a code, I don't have it in front of me, but there's a code that basically states how a county can invest idle funds. I don't particularly agree with the comptroller's results or their that they determined that this is idle funds. But like I said in the commission meeting, it is what it is. I can't change the comptroller's mind. So they've defined that this is idle funds, and idle funds has already been, it's a law on what you can and what you cannot. It's more what you can invest in.
Well, John brought up a good point that this money, that HCI money, a majority of it is with United Way.
Well, not HCI, the hospital sale money.
Okay, the
was
hospital
divided
sale money
between the United Way and the HCI.
All right, and this money that's left is for the county, but it was put there to be kept safe to make sure that it wasn't all spent
and used for only things that are related to
health
in the community. So there are limitations on how you can use it also.
And so y'all understand this is about $15 million, and I'm not sure what the total, I'm not sure anybody ever knew what the total sale was, but the United Way got, I think, around 40 or 30, was it 30 or 40 million, Mylan?
I think it was just a couple million more than what it was almost.
They got more than HCI got. So more of this money is actually invested in a higher return investment. This was just meant to be a safer pot.
Mylan, can you find out if this money could be spent to build that school? I know you've been a trooper, really trying hard to find money for that school.
And I continue to do so, but there's a process that I have to follow, and that's what I'm doing.
Well, when you say the process, if you give this money to this other group, whomever it is, then you have no money to invest in Lake Forest School.
It won't be me doing it. It'll be the county commission as a whole voting to do it.
Well, I mean, could you not find out about this to see if it could be used before this goes to a vote?
The answer to that is not no. I can't because the county commission has to vote on this one way or the other before we can go to the next step.
The state is aware of these conversations. So they want to know.
So in other words, the county, the vote that you're talking about voting on, is whether you want to take the money and reinvest it somewhere besides with Mike Smith.
The way that I phrase it is, this is an option that we would like to pursue if the county commission as a whole decided to do it. And basically, the next step would be to ask our county attorney to file with the Chancellery Court to see if this is something we can do.
And keep in mind, Mike Smith has done an unbelievably excellent job investing this money, but he has to follow the rules that the state gives him.
Right.
Mike does a great job with all of our money.
That's right, he does.
And he's been at finance meetings helping us understand all of this.
Well, what do you think the idea about the Lake Forest School? Is that something that you guys have thought of in the past?
For me personally, I don't want to speak for any other. For me personally, I do like the idea. I think it has a lot of benefits, and I've communicated that to the people who are asking me about where I stand on this. I mean, it basically the way I understand it is that we would loan the money. If you want to look at it from two different entities, the county commission, who basically oversees the money, would loan the money to the trustee, and we would pay through our debt services the interest on the money to the trustee, and the trustee would basically take that interest, allocate it back to the HCI committee, and that it goes back into the community under the rules of health and welfare. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
Mm-hmm. But
it has to be approved.
Mylan, go get them, Tiger. Hey, we just this is the first time in a long time that all three of us have agreed we think the money would be best spent trying to do Lake Forest School if possible.
Well, we'll see what happens on Monday.
Thank you. Thanks for your hard work.
I appreciate you guys.
See you. All right, we need to take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Check into cash. The cash you need is closer than you think.
Get an auto title loan today for up to $2,500 at Check Into Cash.
You drive home with the cash in your pocket.
Visit Check Into Cash for an auto title loan today, or get a payday advance for up to $425. Call toll-free 877-262-CASH. Title loan amount determined by value of car and ability to repay. Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy or sell or point today, the better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
Hello, this is the Matador. You know, every once in a while, you and your spouse or maybe a girlfriend might get into a little dispute. The new policy is now if you call the police, they're going to take both of you. It's going to cost twice as much. But if you want someone to bond you out, someone that's going to be there quick and dependable, that's Speedy's Bonding, who's been in service for 25 years. If you say the Matador, you can get 25% off. And his number is 479-9905.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
Dr. Christopher Chase, with Associates in Plastic Surgery, now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions, also tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase.
If you're looking for a home, apartment, or office space, Jones Properties provides residential and commercial properties in the heart of the Southeast that will fulfill any need. Plus, Jones Properties is one of the fastest growing firms in the area, which offers you more security. When you're ready for a home, apartment, or in need for commercial office space, it makes sense to call Jones Properties first at 472-4000. Plus, you can get additional information by logging on to the website at www.jonesproperties.biz. Jones Properties is also looking to invest in properties. So if you have a property that you need to sell, call the professional team at Jones Properties first. They'll help you find the perfect property for whatever your needs. Call today, 472-4000. And don't forget to keep up with Jones Properties on Facebook.
Okay, welcome back to Backfire. Another exciting episode of Backfire. All right, we've covered some local things. Let's talk about some national events.
Let's talk about the New York Times cropping President Bush out of the photo of the wall.
That turns out to be false, John.
Franklin?
No, the photographer who sent the...
Before y'all start yelling at each other,
here we go again.
About? What are we talking
the
about? The
photographer who actually took the photo says that's not true, that they ran it as he sent the photograph to them.
Then he cropped it out.
Yeah, that's right.
But they didn't put Bush in until the 18th paragraph.
Well, he was there on the telecast.
Let me
the president acknowledged him in his speech.
Franklin.
What is you talking about?
Well, yeah, he did acknowledge him in his speech.
What are we talking about? We need to know.
They walked across the bridge commemorating the 50th anniversary of Selma. Mm-hmm. The New York Times put a picture on the front page that, of course, got Al Sharpton poking his head out around the president, of President Obama, and just beyond the edge of the picture, President Bush and his wife were walking. Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, they got cropped out of the picture. So, apparently, the photographer's now going to fall on his sword and say he did it.
The photographer released a copy of it and showed that the lighting was really bad on him, and so it wasn't a favorable picture of him.
There's another issue here. Why the president and his advance people actually stage these kind of deals? Why would you not have had another former president? Matter of fact, a controversial president as far as this goes.
Beside him on the stage.
Why would you not have had him walk?
And was all over the television news when they did this.
They knew that this bridge would be a picture. And then the Times put President Bush, they mentioned Michael Brown, who we've now found his entire story was not validated by the Justice Department. There were no charges against the officer. He's mentioned 8 times in the story. President Bush is mentioned 1 time in the 18th paragraph. Now, I'm not saying this to defend Bush. My point here is when these liberals talk about we want to work on race relations, that would have been an excellent way to say it. They would have said President Bush, a man who was criticized for Hurricane Katrina,
a really excellent way
came to the
a really
bridge.
excellent way would have been if some Republicans who were actually in office showed up for the event, like they were invited to do for over a year. But
well, you know why they didn't, Franklin? Because they would have been cut out of the picture and mentioned on paragraph 18.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell and John Boehner couldn't manage that on their schedule. But,
you know what?
Well, the president couldn't manage meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel.
You shouldn't be talking about they couldn't meet their schedule when you got Obama can't meet the Prime Minister of Israel. He can't do a whole lot of things because he's too busy playing golf.
But he can have an interview with a woman who takes a bath on the internet in milk.
Anyway,
his interview after the State of the Union was with a comedian who makes her money by taking baths in milk and eating Cheerios while she's rolling around in the bathtub in milk. By the way, the Cheerios are in the bathtub. That's who interviewed the president.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Then you need to look it up. That's who interviewed. That was one of the 3 interviews that he granted after the State of the Union
was she
address.
in the Cheerios when she was interviewing
Yes,
the
she
president?
was. And that's who he dignified with an interview with the President of the United States after the State of the Union address. So please don't tell me that he's a serious man.
Oh, I'm going to tell you that.
Look it up.
That proves to me you read everything. Oh, golly. Trey Gowdy says Clinton has created more questions than she has answers.
Well, even Dianne Feinstein has said that. The Democrats.
Well, what Dianne Feinstein said was she needed to have a press conference and answer some questions, which she did yesterday.
She didn't answer any questions. By the way, Franklin, do you know who got to come to that press conference?
All of the reporters who were scheduled to be at this major event.
You're absolutely
at the
right.
UN.
United Nations.
Now, wait a minute. Let me say this. Franklin just gave you an answer, a good lawyerly answer.
11 reporters.
That is technically correct. Any of the reporters who were credentialed to come to this event.
The
problem
Nations.
is, no. Here's the real problem.
It was a big event.
You had to request credentials 24 hours in advance, but they didn't announce the press conference until about 4 hours in advance. So they didn't tell anybody, and then they said, oh, by the way, if you didn't ask to come to the event you didn't know was happening until yesterday, you can't come.
Was there a shortage of people there asking questions?
There was a shortage of people that were allowed, is the point.
And it was telecast.
Let me add to this, okay? Hillary came there. She had her remarks that she wanted to make. She showed up, and she took a question, and she thought it was going to be just a really easy deal, and she got slammed pretty hard from people she wasn't expecting. And if you noticed, that was probably the quickest news conference in the world.
It was 20 minutes.
And then the last comments that she talked about was the letter.
So, Franklin, do you buy this idea that she should be in charge of what emails go and what emails don't?
Oh, no. There's multiple questions here. The first one is, was it a good idea? And the answer to that one's no. I don't think it was a good idea, and it's not one that I would support in the future.
Well, I appreciate
that.
Now,
the second question is, was it illegal? I don't see any evidence that it was so far.
Actually, he's right and wrong. There's conflicting arguments there. There's one statute that it wasn't illegal, but it's also you're required to ensure that they're all recorded, which she didn't do. There's also a problem of her iPad. She writes extensively in her autobiography that she used her iPad, but iPads, according to the security people, are not cleared because they're not considered secure. That's a problem. She says that there was no classified data. Well, that's not true because 2 years ago, the guy that actually hacked this out of Russia actually downloaded secure classified data off of her.
There's no indication that any emails from this server have been accessed by anybody.
Frankly, that's not true.
Who paid for the server and the service to keep it private, I wonder?
Well, the server was installed by the Secret Service as part of the Clinton administration.
That was part of the
post-presidency.
Okay. So that would have been the government paid for it.
Yeah. Sure,
okay.
Sure.
So why wouldn't we have access to it?
I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't. I just
Well, she said we weren't.
My point.
Did she not say we weren't, John?
Well, there's all kinds of problems
My
here.
point is just that, as far as I can tell, there was nothing illegal about it. I agree that it was a bad idea.
It is a bad.
Okay?
Even
But-
now, she says it is.
But on the other hand, I also understand to a certain extent that people frequently mix up personal and business stuff in their emails,
Well,
and I wouldn't necessarily want anybody browsing through mine either.
Let me ask you. No, let me.
But I
before we
get,
start, John,
but I
let me
still
say.
understand that on the whole, I side with the side of access to them.
All right, now then, can you understand why the Republicans are upset when they ask for information about Benghazi and all this kind of stuff, and they are told that, there's nothing there, there's nothing there, there's nothing there, and then they find out something like this, and then she has the ability to send what she wants to and what she doesn't want to.
Not overly, and let me explain why.
Okay.
Anything that she was doing in an official capacity would have been with somebody else in their official
Well, that's what she said.
Which means that those emails would have been going into.
Let me ask you a question,
service.
Franklin. I can give you a huge list of other departments and other officials that had private accounts. What if all of them were using private accounts as well?
As I've said, John, I think it's a bad idea, and it's not
All right.
something I would support.
All right.
them
As a
doing.
lawyer, let me ask you another question. She submitted, and they've bragged on 55,000 pages. Why were they printed off? Why weren't they turned over electronically?
Well, I don't know the
I
answer
can
to
tell you
that
why,
one,
because
John.
you can't search printed page. You have to, by hand, search printed page. Had they turned them over electronically, somebody could have put a search engine on it and found anything they wanted. So she purposely turned them over in paper to make it harder to search.
Wait a minute. First of all,
Hillary's people.
wait a minute.
Who's Hillary's people?
First of all, let's back up here. What actually happened is that the State Department sent a request at the same time to all former secretaries of state asking whether they had any State Department emails.
They sent it because of
and it
Freedom of
was-
Information Act
and-
requests
and it was-
based from Judicial
And it was
Watch
in
on
response
her.
to that it was done.
But
it
Franklin,
wasn't done as part of
the
some
Freedom of Information
subpoena
Act
or-
request didn't ask for all the formers. They only asked for her. They sent it as
State
cover for her.
Department
Right,
sent-
to cover for her.
Okay.
And she returned it
That's-
not
that's-
electronically.
That's a supposition.
Franklin,
not
can you
something
tell
based
me
in
why
fact.
they would go to the trouble of printing off all of them instead of just turning them over electronically?
How many
I don't know
trees
the
did they
answer to that
kill?
question.
Well, she did it because that's harder to search. And let me give you another. One of her excuses for not turning over the server is because she has all these private communications. Now, this is her quote. The server contains personal communications from my husband and me, and I believe I have met all my responsibilities and the server will remain private. Well, here's a problem. Just the other day, Bill Clinton's people said that he never used email and had only sent 2 in his entire lifetime. Gee, Franklin, how do you marry those two statements? She can't even get the story straight with her own husband.
Well, what gets me though, she says this server was put in place during when her husband was the president. Of
No,
No, it was the day she was to
Post-president.
testify in her
Post-president.
confirmation hearings is when it was started.
Post-presidency.
I mean,
No, the email address she started using started that day. The
was
server
registered.
itself was up and running.
did any
before
of the State Department officials help her in setting it up?
Not that I know of.
Well, has anybody asked her?
I don't know if there's been any allegation that they did that. I think it's pretty much acknowledged that they didn't. That they were doing it. She did this on her
By
own.
the way, the State Department sent out a memo under her name with her signature on it. Now, she claims now that it wasn't her, but it's her name on it, telling all State Department officials to only use certified State Department emails.
Here's what I think, John, and I'm just coming to this conclusion because there's nothing else left. I don't think she did a damn thing when she was in office. Anyway, so therefore there's nothing to find.
Well, her iPad, they were asked, the security people say this is their actual language in their manual. In no case shall a delegated authorizing official make an accreditation decision for a system when an authorizing official deems a breach of security of that information system would result in a high potential impact on organizations or individuals. That's about the iPad use.
And,
well,
and
when
as
the
she,
State
as
Department...
she also pointed out, even with the ones that are official in nature, she says there's absolutely nothing of a classified nature in them.
Well, here's the problem, Frank. Franklin. This is her iPad. She writes exclusively in her autobiography about using her iPad day in, day out on the job. When Jen Psaki, the State Department spokesman, was asked about it, she said, "We don't know anything about it. You'll have to ask Miss Clinton's people." So the State Department, when asked, hey, is this a national security danger that information was transmitted on an iPod, they won't even answer. They turned that answer over to Clinton and her people. Well, Franklin, if I know you're a defense attorney, but if you were a prosecutor, would you allow the accused to decide what?
Well, first of all, there's not an
evidence
accused here. Number
Franklin,
one,
the person, the subject of the investigation. How's that? Would you allow them to determine what evidence is presented and what evidence is not?
Well, John, if there was a legal procedure that was being applied to her,
congressional hearings are legal procedures.
Well, that's not my point right now, John.
Oh, so
I'm
in
not
other words, you
aware.
don't care
I'm not
about
aware of a subpoena having been served on her for this.
So, Franklin, she is the former Department of State head.
As I have just said,
going on.
I think this was a bad idea. What do I think?
Do you
I think it's ultimately
let me ask you something.
more conspiracy babble.
With what you just said, you said it was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Now Hillary said that she was probably wrong. She was probably wrong. She
I'll
should
go
have done
farther.
it.
I think she was wrong.
Okay. Now then, Gowdy wants to know why she won't turn this over to a neutral third party arbitrator to let them go over everything that was there.
Why not give the server to the FBI? If these are such
no legal
conspiracy
requirement to do so,
Franklin,
well,
if there's all these conspiracy theories out here that you say are so fantastical, why not just solve the issue by turning it over to the FBI?
Do we have another
number one, that never resolves conspiracy theories, period. People just change the narrative and change the questions. Which is, you're getting to the Benghazi thing. That's exactly what's happened there.
You do know that Hillary's own spokesman, the night of Benghazi, was telling the State Department to quit answering questions from reporters. Now, this isn't a security person. This isn't a State Department person. It's a press person for Hillary Clinton.
3 Republican committees have investigated this. And
Well, I'm glad
3
you said
Republican committees have issued reports saying
But Franklin,
there was
that's
no
assuming they had all the evidence.
We can't get the
We don't know
information.
whether we even have all the evidence. Trey Gowdy said there are months and months of gaps.
You really think, John?
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
yes, we do.
Franklin,
that's my point.
You all pitched a fit
The
over
facts are irrelevant.
Franklin,
Y'all don't care.
You all pitched a fit over an 18-minute gap in the Watergate tapes. We've got months of gaps in her email.
If you're going to talk about that, John, I would really love to have seen all of Colin Powell's emails when we were leading up to invading Iraq. Guess
I'm okay
what?
with that, Franklin.
All of his emails were deleted.
Ask for it, Franklin.
They're gone.
Here's the.
They
Oh,
don't
really?
have them.
Well,
and guess what? He used a Yahoo account.
Well, so does that mean everybody in the future gets to disappear them too?
No, it means.
Well, take a stand, Franklin. If you think that's wrong, then make Hillary take a stand.
Actually, John, I did take a stand.
Then
You
take
just
a
ignored
stand
it
now.
again.
Demand that Hillary turn her server over to the FBI.
I'm just pointing out to you.
Say right here
it's
that
not
you
illegal
demand.
what she did.
Do you demand that Hillary turn her server over to the
No,
FBI?
I don't demand
So, in other words, you're going to say Colin Powell was wrong, but I'm not going to fix the problem.
I didn't say he was wrong. There you go again, making crap
Well, then
up.
why are you bringing
I
it
never
up?
said that.
Why- so you-
I just
in other
pointed
words-
out to you that what we've done is create a series of policies trying to develop responses to issues that we're only now starting to figure out.
What you've done is you have allowed the government, and I will say Republicans and Democrats, especially with this technology, you have allowed them to circumvent the Freedom of Information Act, and you, as a Democrat, in order to cover for Hillary, are not willing to take a stand and demand that she fix the problem now.
I'm not covering for anybody.
We can't do anything about the past, Franklin, but we can do about the future.
I'm not covering
then
for
demand
anybody.
that she turn her
what
server
I'm
over
doing
to the FBI.
is just pointing out facts.
But then demand
you guys
that she
don't traffic in those very
So you
often.
won't demand that she turn her server over to the FBI?
I won't demand it.
Of course not, because she'd get in trouble because she did bad stuff, and you know it.
No, I don't know that.
Well, none of us will know it if she doesn't turn it over to the FBI,
Guess
will we?
what? If they subpoena it, you'll have a leg to stand on.
What year?
They haven't done that.
What year will we be able to get it in? Why would she fight this? Why would she fight it? Why would
Trey
she fight
Gowdy,
it?
the Republican, is chairing Benghazi 4.
Franklin,
Why hasn't he subpoenaed
how many
it?
subpoenas has the Justice Department simply refused to cooperate with?
On Benghazi?
Yes. on Fast and Furious, on Benghazi, on the Border Patrol agents that were punished for being whistleblowers. This is the most lawless administration in history. Now, don't get me wrong, Franklin. They've all trended this way, but this guy has taken it
all
to an
turned out to
unbelievable
be
level.
a bunch of nonsense.
Well, Franklin, let me ask you a question. Just we can kind of use this to go back a little bit. President Obama said a couple of things. First, he said he didn't know that she was using a private email. 2 days later, the White House had to come out and go, well, actually, yes, he did know, but he just was made aware of it by the press. He had forgotten. But yeah, he did.
That's not what they said, John.
Well, Franklin, I'll read them to you if you want.
What they said was that the president had received a few emails from Hillary.
You know
Clinton.
why? Because his first
That's
statement was
different
because
from-
his
I
first.
noticed
You're
you know what
right.
our email
You're right.
address
They
is.
were very lawyerly. His first statement was, "I found out about it through the press," and then someone said, "Are you telling me that for 4 years as Secretary of State, you and her never traded an email?" So the point was,
that
his-
wasn't working.
his
Actually,
lie-
John,
She
you
did
just,
nothing.
You just said something that's gone through my head during this.
His
And
lie-
that is true.
his
I will be shocked if there aren't multiple emails in there to Republicans too.
Well, there may be, but I'm okay
What?
with putting those out too, Franklin.
No, it's not my point. My point is you're saying, "Oh, this big,
No, my
huge
point is
secret."
that the White
Well,
House was in
if
cover
it's good
mode.
for the goose, it's
and
good
then
for the gander.
My point is, Franklin, this president, here's your two choices. He is either the most dishonest president in history or he's clueless. Because let me read them to you, Frank. Fast and Furious, I found out about it by the press. Solyndra, found out about it through the press. The Justice Department subpoenaing Associated Press reporters, found out about it through the press. The IRS targeting conservatives, found out about it in the press. The National Security Agency snooping on all our phone calls, found out about it in the press. The Obamacare web page design, found out about it in the press. The VA scandal, found out about it in the press. Those were the president's own explanations for every one of those scandals. So this guy is either the biggest liar in history or he is a complete incompetent.
First of
All right, I think that's a good one to end on.
I'm sure you do.
Hey, one more thing. We have a March 24th deadline for the Israel to sign its peace agreement.
By the way, Tehran
What
just
peace
unveiled a new 1,500-mile intercontinental ballistic missile.
I'm sorry, the deadline for new
March
the new-
30th, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
End
it's
of
March
March, isn't it?
March 24th is the deadline.
Okay.
March 24th. Put that on your calendars. We should have a kumbaya agreement with Iran by then.
Not we.
Oh, who? The
The
other four
U.S.,
nations?
Great Britain, France, Germany, Russia, and China.
We all will have
All of them.
an agreement signed.
Yeah, that's
That they were guaranteed won't be a nuclear
This
weapon.
is not an agreement between the U.S. and Iran. It's an agreement between a large group of nations and Iran.
Is it a treaty?
No, it's not.
What is it? What is
Oh,
it?
let's
It's
have
not.
another lawyerly
It's not
explanation
even
for
close
that.
to a treaty.
Wait a minute. Do you think that
It's
maybe
not a
that's why
treaty.
they sent the darn country a letter, because Obama's already trying to say what it's not?
That's
There's no
exactly why.
seeing it. This is like a security agreement that we have with other nations all the time. Those don't go to the Senate for ratification. There's nothing about that that's a treaty. It's not even close to that. It's not an agreement between the U.S. and Iran. That might be a treaty, but this isn't one. There's no question about it. There's not even a debate about
Franklin, for example, the nuclear agreement with Russia that involves other countries as well, was that a treaty? Because it was submitted as a treaty and ratified by the Senate.
Sure.
So
that's
but
a U.S.-Russia agreement.
Well, why is this not a U.S.? Well, actually, that was a Britain, France, everybody. Same scenario
They have
you just
their
laid
own-
out.
No.
Look, this guy doesn't want to send it to Congress because his own Democrats are against it. And now the Justice Department, amazingly, has announced they may be indicting the one Democrat who was really leading the charge against this, Senator Menendez.
Oh,
amazing that came out right before this treaty.
Bye-bye, folks.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music on Whoop FM.
I guess I've come to a conclusion with just about everything that every question that I had to ask.